She stood at his gate with nothing but hope.
That woman was your mother?
She raised me. She sold everything to see me.
Don't fight her. She didn't know me.
When forgiveness was already running out. The streets of Lagos at night. Rain poured heavily, relentlessly, as if the sky were emptying everything it had left unsaid onto the city. Rows of streetlights stretched into blurred streaks across the windshield. Daniel drove faster than the speed limit, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. The rain hammered down in rapid bursts, sounding like a heartbeat racing inside his chest. Lagos never slept at night. Cars still rushed past, horns blaring short, sharp, impatient. Dark faces flashed by in the glow of streetlights, late-night vendors, taxi drivers, night guards, everyone with somewhere to be, something to do. Everyone except Daniel. He was moving among them, yet had no idea where he was going. Amara's words hung in his mind like a deep cut. She said she was your mother. Not was. Not is, just said. A sentence tossed away carelessly, like trash leaving someone else to deal with the damage. Daniel swallowed hard. His throat burned dry. He forced his eyes to stay on the road, but images flooded in anyway. A frail old woman, sun-darkened skin, clutching a cloth bag, standing in the rain before a tall, cold iron gate. A voice calling his name, trembling, painfully familiar. He hadn't been there, and maybe he hadn't wanted to be. His phone vibrated in his hand. Daniel flinched, nearly swerving. He glanced at the screen, the gatekeeper's number. His heart pounded harder. He answered, his voice low and urgent. "Where did you take the old woman?" There was no reply at first. Only wind, rain, and a pause just a few seconds, but long enough for Daniel to know whatever was coming would not be light. "Sir," the gatekeeper finally said, slow and cautious. She collapsed. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The car jerked, tires skidding slightly on the wet road. An angry horn blared behind him. He didn't care. His hands shook, the phone nearly slipping from his grip. "Collapsed?" he repeated, as if he'd misheard. "What do you mean, collapsed?" Another beat of silence. Then the voice returned, lower now. She couldn't stand. She fell and stopped responding. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief moment. A memory flared in his mind, a scorching afternoon in Ibadan, his mother swaying from hunger but still smiling, telling him to eat first. "Mama's fine," she used to say, every time. "Where?" Daniel asked. Just one word, but it felt like it tore all the air from his lungs. "Public hospital," the gatekeeper replied. "Mainland." The world around him faded into a distant hum. Daniel stared ahead at the road stretching forward, leading home, toward safety, toward the life he had chosen. Then he glanced at the rearview mirror. Red brake lights washed over his dark face, revealing tension, exhaustion, and a fear he had buried for years. A public hospital, mainland. The words weighed like stone. Daniel ended the call. The rain swallowed everything again. He took a deep breath and turned the wheel. The car made a sharp U-turn, leaving the familiar road behind. Headlights cut through the rain, opening another path, darker, farther, and full of uncertainty. Daniel turned the car around. Public hospital corridor. Fluorescent lights lined the ceiling, flickering faintly bright, then dim as if exhausted from witnessing too much pain in a single night. The sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with the dampness of old walls, forming an air that weighed heavily on the chest from the very first breath. The soft slap of nurses' rubber sandals echoed steadily down the hall, blending with low moans drifting from distant wards. Daniel ran down the corridor, his breathing uneven. His expensive leather shoes sounded out of place against the cracked ceramic tiles. Sweat mixed with the rain still clinging to his collar, sending a chill through him. His heart pounded so violently, it felt as if it might burst from his chest. He stopped at the nurse's station. My mother was brought here tonight. His voice came out rough, not from running, but from the fear tightening around his throat. The nurse looked up at him, a tall black man in a suit, eyes wide with panic. She hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether she should open a door that could never be closed again. "Name?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. "Ruth," he said, then paused. "Mama Ruth." The nurse looked down and flipped through a thick ledger. The rustle of paper cut through the heavy silence. Daniel held his breath, eyes fixed on her hands, as if staring hard enough might change the outcome. She stopped. "Room 12B. Daniel nodded, murmuring a thank you that barely made a sound. He turned and walked toward the last rooms at the end of the hall. His steps were no longer fast. They slowed, grew heavier, as if the floor itself were pulling him down. When he reached the door to room 12B, Daniel stopped completely. He lifted his hand, but didn't touch the handle. Instead, he leaned forward and looked through the small glass panel in the door. Mama Ruth lay there, smaller than he remembered. Her frail body seemed swallowed by the oversized hospital bed. A thin blanket covered her like a temporary shroud. White bandages wrapped around her head, but faint bloodstains still showed through, spreading like a mark that refused to fade. Her face was pale, lips cracked and dry, her breathing so shallow Daniel had to strain his eyes to see her chest rise and fall. In that moment, memories flooded in. He saw his mother years ago standing under the sun in Ibadan, holding a basin of water, calling him in to eat. He saw her smile, even when there was nothing in the house but a thin bowl of porridge. He saw those rough hands resting on his forehead when he was burning with fever, whispering prayers through the night. That woman was now lying motionless behind this cold glass door. A door opened behind him. Daniel flinched and turned. A black doctor stood there, his posture weary, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. He studied Daniel for a second, then spoke in a low voice. "You're her son?" Daniel nodded. He couldn't find the strength to say anything else. The doctor exhaled softly, as if he had already known the answer. "She collapsed from shock," he said, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had spoken these words far too many times. Then he hesitated, his gaze dropping slightly. "And the cancer has spread." Daniel froze. The words didn't explode. They didn't scream. They fell quietly, yet with enough weight to make everything inside him collapse. He braced himself against the wall to stay upright. The image of Mama Ruth standing in the rain outside his gate flashed painfully clear in his mind. He hadn't opened the gate. And now, perhaps, he no longer had many chances left to open any door at all. The doctor looked at him again, then continued, his voice softer, slower, as if afraid of breaking something else. "She kept asking for you." Daniel stepped inside. The hospital room door closed softly behind him, a faint click, so small it almost didn't exist. Yet in that instant, Daniel felt as though the entire outside world had been cut off. All that remained was the pale white room, the sharp smell of disinfectant, and the woman lying on the bed, his mother. Mama Ruth opened her eyes very slowly, as if every movement had to ask permission from her fragile body. Her gaze searched the dim space before her, then settled on Daniel standing there. She looked at him, for a long time, no surprise, no resentment. Just a quiet, searching look from someone who had waited too long to still have the strength to be shocked. She didn't cry. She didn't ask why he had come so late. She didn't blame him for the closed gate. She only parted her lips, her voice weak but clear. "Daniel, you've grown." The simple sentence struck him straight in the chest. Not "where were you?" Not "why did you let this happen?" Just an acknowledgement, as if, through all the years of distance, the most important thing to her was that her son had grown up, had survived. Daniel couldn't hold himself together anymore. His legs gave way. He sank to his knees beside the bed, head bowed low, like a child who had finally returned after being lost for far too long. "Mama," his voice broke. "I'm here." Mama Ruth's hand trembled as it lifted from the white sheets. Thin fingers, fragile and bony, slowly reached for his face. When they touched him, she smiled faintly, a weak smile, yet heartbreakingly familiar. "Your hands are soft now," she whispered, as if sharing something beautiful. "No more farming." Daniel pressed his lips together. Old memories came rushing back, his own calloused hands as a boy, his mother's hands over his, teaching him how to hold a hoe, how to stand firm on the red soil of the Badan. Now his hands were soft, no longer carrying the smell of earth. But the price of that softness he had never asked. Mama Ruth drew a very shallow breath, as if even air had become a luxury. "I came to see you," she whispered. "I stood at your gate." There was no accusation in her voice, only truth bare, painful, and unchangeable. Daniel lowered his head even further. His shoulders began to shake. "I'm sorry, Mama." The two words fell into the room like a belated confession. Daniel had apologized to many people in his life, business partners, friends, even his wife. But never had those words carried such weight. Mama Ruth closed her eyes for a single second, just one. When she opened them again, her voice softened, as if she were trying to shield him from her own pain. "Don't fight her," she said. "She doesn't know me." Daniel looked up at once. His chest tightened. "Mama, she hit you." He couldn't bring himself to finish the thought. That word hit felt too harsh in this room, too cruel to attach to the woman lying before him. Mama Ruth shook her head very slightly. The movement was so small it was almost imperceptible. "She hit a stranger," she said slowly. Not a mother, it wasn't denial. It was acceptance, bitter, yet calm. As if she had separated herself from the pain so she could continue loving her son, even now. Daniel could no longer speak. A tear slipped from the corner of his eye and fell onto the white sheet beside his mother's fragile hand. And then, another tear, smaller, quieter, fell onto the bed from Mama Ruth's own eye. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the curtains of the Lecky mansion, falling into quiet streaks across the cold marble floor. Amara woke up to an unfamiliar silence. No familiar footsteps. No sound of running water from the bathroom. Beside her, the other half of the bed was empty, cold, as if no one had slept there all night. She sat up, pulling the blanket closer, unease creeping in. Daniel rarely slept out. And when he did, he always sent a message. Today nothing. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Amara picked it up, squinting at the screen. One message. Just one line. No emoji, no explanation. "That woman was my mother." No exclamation mark, nothing more. Yet every word struck her square in the chest. Amara froze. The blood drained from her face. She read it again slowly, as if staring long enough might change its meaning. My mother. Not a mistake. Not a lie, my mother. She called him immediately. The phone rang. Once, twice, then stopped. "Daniel," she said into the silence. "You're joking, right?" She called again. Still no answer. Amara stood up and paced the room. Her usual composure began to crack. She caught her reflection in the mirror, perfectly styled hair, a carefully maintained face, and for the first time she saw uncertainty in her own eyes. She told herself Daniel must be emotional. Maybe he was exaggerating. Poor women lied all the time. That happened every day. An hour passed, stretching like an entire morning. The front gate opened. A car pulled in, the main door unlocked. Daniel walked inside. Amara turned sharply. She noticed it at once. His face was different. Not the familiar fatigue of a late night at work, but something deeper, heavier, as if he had brought another person's entire lifetime into the house with him. "Say it again," Amara said, her voice higher than usual. "That woman. Was she really—" "My mother," Daniel cut in, not loud, not angry, but final, like a door being shut. Amara stepped back, her hand brushing the back of the sofa to steady herself. "No, that's impossible," she whispered. She didn't look. Daniel looked straight at her. His eyes didn't avoid hers. "She raised me alone," he said slowly, each word placed carefully in the room. After my father died, Amara said nothing. Daniel continued, his voice steady but rough at the end. She sold her last chicken to come see me. The room seemed to shrink. The white walls, the expensive furniture, everything suddenly felt distant, as if listening to a story that didn't belong here. Amara swallowed hard. She searched for something, anything to argue with, to keep her world from collapsing. She didn't look like, she began, then stopped. Like what? Daniel asked. Not raised, not mocking, just bare. Like someone worthy? Amara didn't answer. She turned away. This silence was not confidence, it was confusion. She remembered the dirty shoes, the worn clothes, the smell of rain and dust. She remembered the iron gate closing. And for the first time, she couldn't find a reason beautiful enough to excuse herself. Daniel took another step forward, standing directly in front of her. She's dying, he said. The two words fell like a sentence. No explanation needed, no details required. Their meaning spread through the room, touching everything. Amara went pale. Amara sat down, unable to stand, for the first time. She was afraid, not of poverty, not of scandal, not of what people would say. She was afraid of the truth. Some mistakes cannot be fixed with apologies. Some words arrive after the damage is done, and some doors never open again. She had beaten a stranger, but she had broken a mother. And somewhere, in a quiet hospital room, forgiveness was slowly running out. She thought she was protecting her life, but she was destroying a mother's heart. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive late. It arrives when forgiveness is already running out.